Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first in the series of our Safe to Be Me Festival, Inspirational Talks. Delighted to welcome you here today. I'm Catherine Cassidy, Director of Engagement at Scottish Ballet, and I use the pronouns she and her. I'm a small, white, Scottish lady of European descent with blue eyes and blondish hair. And I'm here today wearing a blue top against a blue background and a little floral picture next to me. I'm really pleased to have by my side Catherine King, who is our British Sign Language interpreter in English, and she's here today with us throughout the talk. And now I'm really excited to welcome our very special guest and the focus of our talk today, Nigel Campbell. Nigel is a good friend of mine. He's also an award-winning dance performer and choreographer. Nigel, please introduce yourself to us today.
Well, first, hi, Catherine. It's so great to be here. I'm excited. It's always a pleasure to see you, and I'm really looking forward to chatting today. My name is Nigel Campbell. My pronouns are he, him. I am a brown-skinned African-American man with a short, curly mohawk fro, and and I have black hair. I'm wearing a gray knit t-shirt, and I'm in a theater, actually. There's a piano behind me, and I'm in a black box theater.
Thanks, Nigel. Before we move on to our discussion, I just want to describe Catherine for everyone. So Catherine is a white lady with brown curly hair, beautiful brown curly hair, brown eyes. She's wearing a purple V-neck top and she's sitting against a grey background. And that's us all that are on the chat today. So Nigel, thank you for joining us. And I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about your life and everything that you've achieved. Can you start by just telling us a bit about your journey and maybe some of the challenges that you faced in that journey?
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. I always think it's a very unlikely journey. I often sit back and reflect on how I arrived here, and really just a series of blessings, and being in the right place at the right time, and having people who supported me and helped uplift me and saw something in me that I didn't always see. I'm from the Bronx, New York, and I was raised by my mom. I found dance a little bit later than some people. I was in junior high school, so I was like 11 or 12, but I can recall being very far behind my peers. I was small, I was chubby, I was not flexible at all. And no, I was not the kid who walked into the room and the teachers said, "You're the one who's going to be a
You're the
dancer.
dancer.
You're the dancer." I was not that person.
How things have changed.
Right. I started dancing through my church. Actually, I went to church in Brooklyn where I met my best friend, Chanel De Silva, who will come up, I'm sure, many times, my best friend and partner. And I actually there was a musical in the church that chronicled the transatlantic slave trade, actually. And it was a really powerful musical. And through that, I kind of started my entryway into the arts. And the choreographer of that musical had a dance school called Creative Outlet Dance Theater of Brooklyn. And so after the musical that summer, I started my training at Creative Outlet. Um, from there, I auditioned for LaGuardia Arts High School, which is the Fame School, if you know the movie Fame.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Nigel, when you first started your training, were you straight into contemporary dance or did you do some ballet or what were the styles when you very first got involved?
yeah. This local studio was great in that it really just focused on performance and passion, and they kind of you fell in love with moving, and then they funneled you into the technique, the codified techniques. So we took ballet and modern and contemporary and jazz and West African. We took a lot of different things, but it wasn't until I got to LaGuardia that I started to understand the craft of dance.
Yeah.
But before that, no one thought I would get into LaGuardia. So that's the first kind of, I remember my teacher, I auditioned for acting and dance. And I remember my teacher saying, great, get in any way you can. Like, because they didn't think I would get in for dance.
Oh,
Somehow I did. They saw something in me and I got in. And that was when I really started to learn about the craft of dancing and training. And I was, at the bottom of the class. Chanel and I were in the same class. We were both the underdogs. Um, and I remember working really, really hard all throughout high school, like just pushing myself incredibly hard and training as much as I possibly could because I really, really wanted to be good at dancing. And
you must have had a real passion for it.
I did. I always had a passion for moving. And the moment you know what? It was challenging. It was hard. And so I never, it's still hard. And so I never feel like I've arrived. And so it keeps me interested in it. So I was like, I want to figure, it was kind of an intellectual thing. I was like, I need to figure this out. So I continued my training at LaGuardia. I continued my training at Creative Outlet, and I started training at the ALA school as well. And by senior year of high school, I started to branch out and audition for things, and I started to win awards, and I started to get recognized at a national level. And that's when I started to think, maybe I could do this. Like maybe there's something here. From
Did
there,
you,
mhm.
did you feel that you won awards because you had worked so hard on your technique and your confidence had grown and you felt that people recognized that talent and confidence in you because you'd worked so hard, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they recognized my passion and my love for dancing,
Mm.
and I had gotten good enough that my technique didn't hold me back. I was not super technical, certainly not by the standards of today, for sure. But I was technical enough that they were willing to take a chance on me. And that continued through. Then I got into Juilliard, um, which was shocking. Chanel and I both got into Juilliard, two kids from the Bronx and Brooklyn.
Wow. You
Yeah, I
must
mean,
have celebrated.
oh my God, I went screaming down the street. So a fun fact, LaGuardia High School and Juilliard are across the street from each other. So when I got a call, I was at LaGuardia and I went screaming down Lincoln Center, New York City, across Juilliard, just like screaming that I had gotten in. It was like a wild, crazy dream. And then I got there and I was again the underdog. It was so, there's been this cycle in my life, which I think is beautiful and I think has kept me humble, where I was just good enough. I was as good enough as I needed to be when I needed to be there. But I wasn't like this prodigy. I wasn't like someone who was just, amazing. So I got to Juilliard and I, I was at a lower technical level than the other dancers. And I realized, my head was a little bit big at that point because I'd been winning all these awards and I got into Juilliard and they popped my head down to size because I realized that they took me in spite of my lack of training and not because I was so amazing. They were like, there's something in you, but it needs a lot of development. And so I went on the same way I did in high school, this 4-year journey to like get myself ready to go into the field because I knew that I wanted it so bad. My time at Juilliard was both rewarding and difficult. Um, I spent most of my performing career in Europe, in Germany and Sweden. But when I was a senior in college, I asked my director where in Europe he thought that I should audition because I didn't know anything about Europe. And he said to me, you're too short, you're not flexible enough, you don't have the lines, you're just so American. I don't think you should waste your time and money going all the way over there. And
Wow.
then he told me that I should dance for Alvin Ailey. It wasn't lost on me that I'm Black. And he suggested that I dance for a quote unquote Black company. Um, so that was hard. I mean, I felt totally put in a box.
Mm.
Um, I didn't feel supported at all, but I am stubborn and I'm tenacious, and that fueled me to want to make it happen. And so I went to Europe, and I ended up being the only person in my class who got a job in Europe.
Wow. I wonder whether, having had in your very early years, people who did take a chance on you and people who believed in you, whether that gave you a little bit of a core of inner resilience, when you had that really, negative experience that we wouldn't want our young people nowadays to face, that kind of boxing in,
Right.
that maybe there was something there that had grown in you and it was able to push you forward.
Absolutely. I think that I know that from that little studio creative outlet that I started in, and my teacher, Jamel, he always was honest with me, but he always told me that he was like, you're short, you don't have technique, you're not flexible, but there's something else that's special about you. And when you're a kid, you don't want to hear that. Like, I wanted to be tall and flexible, but he kept it real with me. And I knew that that wasn't going to be my way into the field, and that there was something else inside of me that was special and different. And, growing up, I didn't see many dancers who looked like me, particularly in these European companies that I ended up dancing for. There were rarely ever any Black people. Um, and so I never thought that I could be a dancer because of that. But ironically, me being different is what drew directors and choreographers to me as a dancer, because I had something else to offer that nobody else in the company was offering.
And I think that's a magical message, because what you're talking about is the fact that we're all different. All of us are different, and we have something to offer that someone else might see in us that we don't know it's even there ourselves. And it wasn't until that young teacher told you, you might not be flexible, but there's a magic in there. And I know that magic. I can see it now that you're an adult. I've seen it in the studio. I know what it looks like. So that never goes. It never leaves you. So can you tell me a little bit about what inspired you as a professional dancer in those early years of working in Europe, and maybe a little bit about what inspires you now as a director of Gibney?
Yeah, it's really interesting how the vision grows and the dream grows and expands. Um, I was always inspired by storytelling, I think. What I loved about dance, what I grabbed onto right away, was just this kind of magical, transcendent moment. There were these moments on stage where I felt more like myself while I was dancing than any time before. I felt like the truest and most authentic version of myself. And watching older dancers, professional dancers, and seeing the mastery that they had over their body and the way that they could shift time and space, really inspired me and made me want to get better, because I wanted to be able to be a magician in the way that they were magicians. And so the quest for bettering myself, and becoming the best version of myself has always pushed me and inspired me. And as I began to grow and I kind of figured out dancing a bit, I started to want more. And I was living in Sweden, and it was in 2013, around 2013 to 2015, I lived there. It was the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States. I was in a very white country, and it was the rise of the migrant crisis as well. And so oftentimes I would be seen as a refugee. People thought I was a refugee, and they would tell me to go back to Somalia. You know, people would say, I'm going to send you a one-way ticket back to Africa. And I was like, well, I've never even been to Africa. And, you know, if I had been from Africa, is that such a bad thing? And so I realized I had gotten to Gothenburg Opera Dance Company, and it was like a dream of mine. It was this beautiful A-list, quote unquote, contemporary dance company, but I was socially having such a difficult time. I didn't feel that I fit in. I felt ostracized, and I was isolated from my community. And
Mm.
so it was a weird moment in my life because I had achieved what I finally wanted to achieve as a dancer, and I was miserable as a human being. And I thought, this can't be what I've worked my entire life for. And so at that point, I started realizing that I wanted to do more concrete work in my communities and use my art, not just for myself. You know, I was inspired by making myself better. And at that moment, I realized that it had to be bigger than me.
Mm.
And so I quit my job in Sweden. I didn't do any auditions. And I just moved back home to New York in the summer of 2015 with no job prospects, and no idea what I was going to do with my life. I just knew that I needed to go home.
Wow. Such it's such a brave and profound thing to hear you talking about it, and to have the self-awareness to realize that actually what you've worked for your whole life and that you're now achieving, and the way that that magic that you described around in your being your fullest capacity as a physical athlete and an artist, and allowing that to happen at the same time, and that mastery, feeling that and knowing that you have to leave it because you don't feel that socially you're fitting in at that point. It's such a difficult thing to hear you talking about, but it's inspiring. And again, it makes me think about your core and your resilience and your sense of self-belief that's come through your whole life, and that's helped you develop where you're going.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard, but those experiences are why I came home and created Move NYC with Chanel. That inspired us to get to work, to have a positive impact on our community and on the dance field, and to create an organization whose mission is to cultivate greater diversity and equity in the dance field, and to empower those young dancers as teenagers in the same way that my teacher empowered me, so that I can't fix racism and I can't fix, the world. But what I can do is prepare these young dancers to go into the world and understand that who they are is special, and that what they have to offer is valuable, and instill in them the confidence that they need to step out into the world, knowing that there's going to be a lot of hardships, but that those experiences will make them stronger human beings and better human beings.
And also, what I'm hearing from you and what I know of you is that you're preparing them to find that strength in themselves, so that you're going beyond the artistry. I know in the studio, you expect work ethic, you expect respect, you expect them to respect one another, so that when they discover the joy of their potential as an artist, they also have that foundation of really knowing who they are as a person, and what they will tolerate and what they won't tolerate, and what's right for them in the world. And also that what I've seen you do is to give them communication skills so that they're able to say, this is not acceptable, or wow, this is magical, thank you, we need more of this.
It's amazing that you said that, Catherine, and I completely agree. I remember when I was younger, I didn't have the language when things would happen to me at school, or when I was living in Europe. There was no such term as a microaggression. There was no such term as white privilege, or any of these things that I now understand. But my students, it's inspiring to watch them, because I learn a lot from them. They have so much more information and knowledge and language at their fingertips to be able to understand what is right and what is not right, and to be able to advocate for themselves in a way that I didn't feel comfortable doing when I was younger. So if we can move the needle forward, in that way, and just like any parent, I guess, quote unquote parent, for them to just be better and have more opportunities than I had.
It's so exciting to hear you talking that way because, I'm really interested in hearing from this generation of young people that are coming forward. They're so open-minded, they're so accepting of one another. I have a son who's 17 who said to me recently, why are we even talking about gender and binary? Like, who cares? It
Right.
doesn't matter. And the way that you're talking about race, is the same in terms of their understanding of who they are themselves and what that means to one another. And that, it's just, it's such a breath of fresh air, and it's so exciting to hear that we're moving in
Yeah.
that direction, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And I spoke to one of my former students, former young professionals from Move NYC, who's now a dancer at Juilliard. And I told this dancer, I said, the gender pronouns, the binary, non-binary, non-conforming movement is really, their generation's movement. We do have the words now for race and racism. We are making headway in the right direction, and the kind of struggle and fight and conversations that they're having now around that, and that's becoming a global conversation, is reminiscent to me of the conversations when I was that age that we were having around race.
It's so interesting. I mean, we're doing a lot of work in the ballet sector because there are issues and we're working really hard. And something that's really excited me is the way that we're looking not just to allow Black and brown children to come and feel safe with us, but to have role models. So our Black and brown dancers will meet them and welcome to the building. And we're consulting really heavily with partners to say, tell us what you need, tell us what we should be thinking about, because we don't know. And we're desperate to learn, and we want a tolerable, exciting environment for everyone to flourish. And, so that's what we're working at here at Scottish Ballet and with our partners across the UK.
I think that's brilliant and beautiful. And you've said so many things that are so right. You don't know what you don't know. And the
Yeah.
first step is acknowledging that, and not sitting in a room with each other trying to fix something that you don't know how to fix. So I love that you're bringing in people, consultants who are experts who can help move the needle forward. I love that you're providing representation for students to be able to see themselves in the field, because when you see yourself in the field, you show up differently to class to train every day because you believe it's possible. And that recruiting and creating a safe environment for those young dancers of color to thrive. That just sounds so right. It's music to my ears. I love everything that the Scottish Ballet is doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Nigel.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to me a little bit about, I guess, what identity, I mean, we've spoken a little bit about what identity meant to you when you were younger, but maybe there's more you want to say on that. But I'm keen to hear, what identity means to you now, because, we're starting to touch on topics of race and gender. And I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important and something that's come up, and I'm happy to speak more on it. Identity is so interesting, and I consider myself a global citizen. I've lived in 3 countries, and I've traveled 4 cities, 3 countries, and I've traveled all over the world. And that's really informed a lot of how I view myself and view myself in relationship to the world. I, in some places, in some people viewed me as ultra Black, like I'm straight, from Africa. In some spaces, I'm viewed as ambiguously Black. I used to have hair, and I have very curly, long curly hair. And so because of some of my features in my hair, people were not sure like what exactly I was, and or what I was mixed with. And I came across a person, a woman, and she was South African. And in South Africa, she's considered colored. I met her in Kenya, and she said, I introduced myself. I said, "Where are you from?" And she said, "Well, in the United States, I'm considered Black. In Kenya, I'm considered white. And in South Africa, I'm considered colored." And it hit me really deep, this idea of identity, because she's the same person, but considered three different races depending on where she is in the world. So, how much of my identity is me and who I am, Nigel?
Yeah.
And how much of it is wrapped up in a larger social or cultural context that's really put on us? It has value. I am a Black person and my culture does mean a lot to me, but I also am Nigel. Um, and so it's like what your son said about why are we, we do need to talk about it, but I think we want to talk about it to get to a place where it doesn't matter what my gender is, where it doesn't matter what my race is. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. But at the core, I've learned from living so many different places and meeting so many different people that it's about me and who I am and that unique individual that I am, who associates with many different cultures and ideas, but I am uniquely myself.
And you've been told that from a very young age, there's something there, there's something special. And I guess we are all uniquely ourselves. It's interesting, to hear you talking because, at the start of the talk today, I described myself as a white person of European heritage. And I feel like I'm a European person, although I'm Scottish.
Mm.
I've got some Irish in me, God knows where from, and actually it doesn't really matter because
Right.
here I am at the end as a product, the same as you are. Here we both are.
Yes.
And what we have to offer is who we are today and all of the experience and things that we've overcome.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, just we're nearly out of time, and I'm really keen to hear a little bit about how you support your students. So, you've built this incredible program that is renowned internationally and spoken about internationally. And I'm so excited to say our main partner on our youth exchange program, which is, very, very proud of that fact. When your young dancers come to you and say, I am experiencing barriers in this way or in this other way, how do you support them in those moments,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I recently spoke with a young Asian dancer who's in our program, and she's been experiencing a lot of hate recently. Hate crimes against Asians are on the rise dramatically. And she experienced something, and it felt really like, again, I went back to this feeling of being a parent and the innocence, watching your child lose that innocence
Yeah.
and learning that the world is sometimes not a great place. And so for me, I don't want to shy away from that. This is real. This won't be the last time
Yeah.
that you experience this, but know that whatever you're experiencing from someone else has more to do with them than it has to do with you. It's not about you. If somebody needs to make you feel small so that they feel tall, then they have some work that they need to do in themselves. And so you stand tall, you be proud of who you are, you walk into a space and know that you belong there and that you have something to offer this world that is special and unique, and know that not everybody is going to see that, and that is not your problem.
It's really moving to hear you talking that way. And it's reminding me a little bit about, at the start of the discussion, you talked about a cycle that you felt in your life where you would go up the next level and you were back at the bottom again. You would go up the next level and you're back at the bottom again. And I guess, all these experiences that we have as little people, as adults, like you say, dance is never easy. You never feel like you've arrived. And it's the same with life. Children look at you as an adult and they think, oh, well, you're an adult now, you know what to do.
Right.
But it's about remembering that advice and thinking, you know, I have something to offer, and just reflecting on where that moment's come from when you receive that negativity. And, you know, we can't always be resilient, but, you know, as best we can.
As best we can. And, I try to hold on to good moments. There are good moments. Even inside of bad moments, there are good moments. There are silver linings everywhere. If we think about this past year that we've had, which has been so difficult, I can think of so many silver linings of that. We're talking right now. I didn't have to fly to
I
Scotland.
know.
So that brought us closer together. And so I tell my students and I tell myself, I hold on to the good moments for dear life, and I use them to help prop me back up in the moments of hardship.
Thank you so much, Nigel. And thank you so much for everything that you've shared. You've been so honest and so open and so generous. And I feel like there's so many more topics. I feel like I want to go and get a drink and sit down with you and talk about them now.
I would love that.
I know. It feels like we're just getting started, but thank you so much for your time and giving us an insight into your life in such an honest way. And I'd also like to say thank you to Catherine and her work with us here today, and helping us to access everything that Nigel said in a really special way. And thank you everyone for joining us. And I hope that you'll switch on for the rest of our talks that we're going to be offering during this series.